Our story begins once upon a time far, far away. Not just as far away as another country, or as far away as the moon, but far, far away in another galaxy. Yes, our story begins on a planet called Grobolia. It was a very nice planet. It had beautiful skies and trees and oceans. But it was just too small for the number of people who lived there. So the Grobolians went off in search of new planets to settle. They discovered Serum, which was a fine place for miners, and Fessum, which was a fine place for fishermen, and Caelus, which was a fine place any way you looked at it, especially for farmers. Lintola and her brother Ajax decided to move to Caelus because they wanted to be farmers, but they couldn't fly to Caelus by themselves. They had to be part of a group that would fill a spaceship. Each ship held exactly 10 passengers. 10 Grobolians could get together and sign up for one ship. 30 could sign up for 3 ships. And 100 could sign up for 10 ships. But Lintola and her brother were only 2. They had to find a group of 8 passengers. They found a group of 6, a group of 7, a group of 2, but no groups of 8. Then they met another group that was heading for Caelus. This time there were 24 of them. They could fill 2 ships with 4 Grobolians left over. Even after inviting Lintola and her brother to join them, they still had only 26, so they had to find more Grobolians. Soon they came upon a group of 32. It was decided to see how many ships they could fill together. They made up 5 full ships, but there were 8 left over. It didn't work out. Then they found a group of 25. Together they could fill 4 ships with 11 left over. 11 could fill another ship with just 1 left over. It would all work out fine if that 1 left the group. Someone explained to Lintola that her brother could go to Caelus first and make a home for her, and then she could join him later. That night, Lintola began to feel very much alone. One day, Lintola met a Grobolian named Cryle. He told her that he would arrange everything for her. He'd find her a group, and she'd be off to Caelus in no time. There was only one problem, however. She might have to spend a little time on Fessum first. Cryle told her Fessum was not such a bad place. This picture was taken on a bad day. Normally, Fessum was calm and beautiful, and she'd enjoy the fishing. And in no time at all, he'd get her to Caelus. So she and 9 others boarded a ship for Fessum. It wasn't easy to find settlers for Fessum, and when someone did, they were well rewarded. For you see, Fessum wasn't a very nice place, and it had a lot of bad days. In fact, that was all Lintola ever saw, bad days. Lintola was miserable, and all seemed hopeless when she met a large family bound for Caelus. There were 23 of them, and Lintola would make 24. They found a group of 18, and that made 3 tens, which would fill 3 ships, with 12 left over. The 12 could fill a ship with only 2 left over. Oh well, the 2 could wait. Just as Lintola was ready to give up hope, Cryle appeared. He'd found a group for Lintola and her friend. There was a group of 17 and a group of 21. They could fill 3 ships with 8 left over. With Lintola and her friend, they could fill exactly 4 ships. Lintola was very grateful to Cryle, and she apologized for having doubted him. Lintola was anxious to see Caelus, but when she got off the ship, it wasn't Caelus at all. It was Serum. Serum was desolate and hot, and Lintola was miserable once again. When Cryle showed up on Serum, Lintola was furious with him, but he told her that Serum wasn't all that bad. In fact, she might even find diamonds in the mines. But all Lintola found in the mines was coal, and more coal. No one seemed happy on Serum, so Lintola organized a group of miners to go to Caelus. Since she was the organizer, she wouldn't be left behind this time. There were 27 of them, and they met a group of 16. Lintola had them form groups of 10. They had enough for 3 full ships with 13 miners left over. The 13 could fill a 4th ship with 3 left over. Those 3 could wait. But the 3 didn't want to wait. They'd been left behind before. They insisted that everyone draw straws to see who should stay. So everyone drew straws, and guess what? Lintola lost again. Lintola spent all her spare time at the spaceport waiting for a place on a ship. One day she spied Cryle about to leave for Caelus. She felt it was unfair that he could go to Caelus after all the tricks he played on her. That gave her an idea. She ran up to Cryle and thanked him for getting her to Serum. She had found diamonds after all. Cryle was delighted at Lintola's newfound wealth and offered to help her manage it. She could take his place on the ship and he'd handle the diamonds for her. Hesitatingly, Lintola agreed and drew him a map showing where the diamonds were. By the time Cryle discovered that her map led to a big empty space, Lintola was well on her way to join her brother on Caelus. Once there was a nice man named Filbert who sold melons, and a not very nice man named Rupert who loved to eat melons. One day, Rupert came into Filbert's store.
Give me 23 melons.
Filbert laid out 2 boxes and 3 extra melons. There were 10 melons in each box, so there were 10, 20, 23 melons in all.
I don't trust you, Filbert. Count the melons.
So Filbert began to count them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23.
And there were indeed 23 melons. When Rupert had left, Filbert's parrot began squawking.
Cheater! Cheater! Cheater!
He only did that when Rupert left the store. Filbert couldn't understand why. One day Filbert got a new shipment of melons. There were exactly 5 boxes. That was 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 melons in all. Just then, Rupert appeared.
Give me 20 melons. And count them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Rupert paid Filbert and left. And as usual, the parrot began squawking.
Cheater! 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 Wah!
Filbert ignored the parrot and started to put the boxes away. But to his surprise, there were only 2 boxes left. Now he had 5 boxes this morning. He'd sold 2 boxes to Rupert, so he should have 3 boxes left. 5 minus 2 was 3, but he didn't have 3 boxes left.
Wah! Cheater! 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 Wah!
Could Rupert be cheating him? When Rupert came in again, Filbert knew he had 37 melons in stock.
Give me 23 melons and count them.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Cheater! 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 Wah!
Filbert knew he had 37 melons. That was 3 boxes and 7 extra melons. Rupert had bought 23 melons, or 2 boxes and 3 extra melons, so he should have 4 melons and a box left, or 14 melons left. But when Filbert looked, he had only 1 box, or 10 melons left. He had been cheated. Rupert was shocked that Filbert thought he was cheating him.
You've hurt my feelings.
This made Filbert feel awful, so he gave Rupert some free melons.
Wah! Fool! 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 Give me 23 melons.
From now on, we will check the stock before the sale and again after the sale to see how many were sold.
I don't understand.
Filbert showed him that he had 5 boxes and 4 melons. That was 54. Rupert wanted 23. That was 2 boxes and 3 melons. Then that would leave 3 boxes and 1 melon left, or 31 melons.
I understand, but I've changed my mind. I don't want 23 melons. I'll take 18 melons instead.
So Filbert took 1 box and 8 melons and began to count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18.
Then Filbert began to figure out what should be left. He started with 54 melons. He gave Rupert 18 melons. Filbert couldn't figure it out on paper. So he thought of the 5 boxes and 4 melons he'd started with. He could take away 1 box, but he couldn't take away 8 melons, since there were only 4 loose melons.
Wah! Cheater! Cheater! Wah! Cheater!
How can you take away 8 from 4? Filbert wondered.
Dump the box! Dump the box!
Filbert didn't understand, but he was determined to solve the problem. He thought of 5 boxes and 4 melons. How could he take away 8 melons?
Dump the box! Dump the box!
Aha, thought Filbert. And he traded in a box for 10 melons. Now I still have 54 melons. 10, 20, 30, 40, and 14 makes 54. I can take away 18 melons, so I have 36 left. Then Filbert tried to work it out on paper. He started with 54 melons. Then he dumped a box, so he had 4 boxes and 14 melons. Then he took away 18 melons, and that left him with 6 melons and 3 boxes, or 36 melons. Now he'd show Rupert.
How many melons you got?
Filbert showed him his stock of 45 melons.
Give me 17.
Filbert set out a box and 7 melons. He counted
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.
Then Filbert said he started with 4 boxes and 5 melons. He had given Rupert 1 box and 7 melons. So he had to dump a box.
Dump a box?
Filbert told him that 4 boxes and 5 melons was the same as 3 boxes and 15 melons. So he should have 8 melons and 2 boxes left. But Rupert pointed out that he had 1 box and 8 melons left. That proved that Filbert's dump a box didn't work. Filbert looked out and saw Rupert sneaking off with an extra box. So his dumper box system worked after all. But what could he do to stop Rupert?
Trapdoor! Trapdoor! Trapdoor!
So Filbert set to work. He worked all that night.
Give me 23 melons.
As usual, when Filbert was counting, Rupert tried to steal some extra melons.
7, 8, 9,
But this
10.
time,
Smart Filbert! Smart Filbert! Smart Filbert!
once there was a land that had a very remarkable tree, the tree of truth. People used it to answer their problems. If someone wanted to know who was the nicest person in the land, they wrote, "Box is the nicest person in the land." Put the question in the tree and pull the branch. Then the word that made the sentence true would pop out. And it was true. Ebenezer was the nicest person in the land. Sometimes more than one answer came out. For the question, "Box is taller than Quentin," both Hortense and Benjamin made the sentence true. The king had a special interest in the tree of truth. He used it to keep his accounts straight. When new money would arrive, like 5 gold coins and 2 gold coins, he would want to know how many coins he had altogether. His lowliest serf could have told him he had 7, or he could have counted them if he wasn't sure, but he only trusted the tree. So one of his mathematicians would write the sentence, then the other mathematician would check it, and a page would take it to the tree of truth. Sure enough, it was a 7 that made it true. The tree was even more useful when the king asked what his total fortune was. He had 8,357,269 gold coins, and he got 7 new coins. The king certainly had a lot of money, but he always wanted more. One day, a merchant moved to the land. She was reputed to be very, very rich. The king wanted to know how rich. The page put the question into the tree of truth and pulled the branch. But the tree said, "None of your business." The king was furious. He wanted the tree chopped down, but the mathematicians persuaded him that it was too valuable. The king decided that as long as the new merchant didn't have more money than Gilder, the second richest man in the land, he didn't need to know how much gold she had. The page was sent to the tree with the question. The tree's answer to the question was true. And then another answer appeared which was also true. This made the king feel uneasy. Surely he was still the richest person in the land. Still, it might not hurt to check. So the question was taken to the tree. The page was very frightened when he returned, and the anger of the king was felt throughout the land. The tree had answered that the new merchant was the richest person in the land. The king had to know how much more the new merchant had, so the page was sent to spy on the new merchant. One day the merchant received some money and went to the tree. The page followed. He saw that she now had 8,421,304 pieces of gold. The king then asked his mathematicians how much more gold the merchant had than he. The first mathematician said that the king had this much gold, and the merchant had this much. She said they must find out what to add to the king's total to equal the merchant's total. No, said the other mathematician, the merchant has this much gold. If you take away the gold that matches the king's, you want to know what the merchant has left. And the two mathematicians began to fight, so the king dismissed them. The mathematicians decided to try an easier problem first. The first mathematician had 8 coins, the second had only 5. How many more coins were there in the first row than the second? The first mathematician said it was an addition problem. What should be added to the second row of coins so they would equal the first row? The sentence for the problem was box plus 5 equals 8. The second mathematician thought it was a subtraction problem. What is left when the second row of coins is subtracted from the first row of coins? The sentence is 8 minus 5 equals box. They sent off both sentences to the tree, and 3 made both sentences true. Could it be that both sentences were true? So they sent off another sentence to the tree. The page returned with 2 answers. So the mathematicians told the king that either way would work to find out how much more money the merchant had. You could see what you needed to add to the king's gold to equal the merchant's gold, or you could see what was left of the merchant's gold when you took away the amount equal to the king's. The king was not pleased with his mathematicians. He wanted one way, the best way. So the mathematicians wrote the sentence, box is the one best way to tell how much more gold the merchant has. Page took the sentence to the tree, put the paper in, and pulled the branch. The tree quivered. Its branches shook. Its leaves dropped off, and finally it just crumbled. There was no one best way. Both ways were good. The king was inconsolable. The tree of truth was gone forever. Now he'd never know how much more gold the merchant had. That gave one of his mathematicians an idea. The next Sunday, the king dressed in his finest robes, and he went calling. And before very long, he became very friendly with the merchant. So all the money belonged to both of them. However, we can't say that they never again had problems.
Once Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs. The first little pig was very lazy. The second little pig was very playful. And the third little pig was very smart. One day, their mother called them together and told them that it was time they left to seek their fortunes. She gave each of them 8 gold coins and sent them off into the world. They hadn't gone far when they met a possum.
Out into the world, eh? Well, you'd better watch out for the bad wolf. He'd like to get 3 little fellows like you. Of course, if you happen to have a magic wolf-proof rope like this one, you'd be perfectly safe. All you do is put 3 posts in the ground, attach the rope to the first post, wrap it around the second post, and attach it to the third post.
But the smart pig pointed out that 1/2 of the rectangular area was still open.
That's where the magic comes in. Stay inside the rectangular area and you'll be safe.
The lazy pig thought it sounded like too much work. The playful pig said she wasn't afraid of any wolf. But the smart little pig convinced his brother and sister. So, with their 8 gold coins, they each bought 8 meters of magic wolf-proof rope. After a couple of hours of trudging along in the hot sun, the lazy pig spotted some shade trees and decided to save himself some work. The first 2 trees were 7 meters apart. The third tree was 1 meter from the second tree. So the first little pig had a rather narrow wolf-proof area, but it seemed to be a fine place for a snooze. Meanwhile, the other 2 pigs continued on their way. The playful pig began to feel like playing, so she said goodbye to her brother and began to play. The third little pig continued on until he found just the right place for a farm. Being smart, he decided to plan things out first. He had 8 meters of rope. He could put 7 meters on one side. That would leave 1 for the other side. Then he'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 square meters to live in. 7 meters by 1 meter make 7 square meters. But then he wondered if he could do better. If he put 6 meters on one side, he'd have 2 meters on the other. So he'd have 6 square meters plus 6 more square meters, and 6 and 6 make 12 square meters. That was better than 7, but what if he had 5 on one side? That left 3 meters of rope for the other side. That would make 5 square meters once, 5 square meters twice, and 5 square meters 3 times, or 15 square meters in all. That was better yet. Could he get even more room? If he put 4 meters on one side, he'd have 4 meters left for the other side. Then he'd have 4 square meters, another 4, another 4, and another 4. And 4 fours was 16 square meters. And that was the best yet. Now, if he had 3 meters on one side, he'd have 5 meters left over for the other side. Then he'd have 3 square meters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And 5 threes was 15 square meters. But that was less than he'd had with the sides 4 by 4. That was the same as he'd gotten with 5 on one side and 3 on the other. Of course, one was just like the other, only turned around. It didn't matter which side the rope was on, the rectangle would be the same. Then 2 meters on one side and 6 on the other would be the same as 6 on one side and 2 on the other, only turned around. And 1 meter on a side with 7 on the other was the same area as 7 on one side and 1 on the other. So 4 by 4 would give him the most area to farm in, and best of all, he'd be safe from the wolf. In the meantime, the playful pig was still jumping when the lazy pig ran into her wolf-proof area. But there was no area.
Yipe!
Quick, in here. There's plenty of room.
And so the 3 pigs were safe at last. Now, normally the story would end at this point, but a short time later...
What happened to you?
The wolf told the possum what had happened, and...
Well, my friend, I have the very thing for you. 24 meters of pig-proof rope. Yes, sir, guaranteed to keep one and all pigs away.
24 meters of pig-proof rope. Huh. I wonder how much area that will give me.
Once upon a time, in one of the great tropical forests that sprawled across the equator, there lived a monkey called Max. Max had a passion for bananas, and every morning, with great gusto and delight, he would eat all the ripe, juicy bananas he had picked the night before. And afterward, totally content, Max would scamper off to play with his friends. One morning, Max found his friends in a state of great excitement.
The vine was moving by itself. I've never seen anything like it.
And a bunch of bananas picked themselves and floated off. Can you imagine that?
I can vouch for them both. I saw it, too. I couldn't believe my eyes.
Hey, you guys must have been dreaming.
And the same day, he found a bunch of bananas so ripe and lovely that he never gave the slightest thought to what his friends had told him that morning. The next morning, Max woke up earlier than usual and slipped down the tree to his bunch of bananas. But instead of a bunch, the bananas were spread out in a line, and some of them were gone.
I don't understand it. This has never happened before. I'll bet my pals think they're pretty clever. They must have taken those bananas.
Somehow, breakfast just wasn't the same, and Max was so annoyed by his friend's cruel joke that he decided to go and straighten things out. But his friends denied taking any of the bananas, which made Max even angrier, and he went off muttering and spluttering. That evening, his anger cooled somewhat when he found 15 almost perfect bananas.
15 bananas, 15 lovely bananas.
But the next morning, it had happened again. This time, the bananas were spread out in 2 rows of 5, or 10 bananas in all. Max had 15 bananas, and someone had taken 5 of them. The mere thought of this made him purple with rage. And when he found his friends, he was too angry to speak. With great effort, they convinced Max that none of them had taken his bananas. That night, as Max headed for home with a new bunch of 12 bananas,
We saw it again.
Saw what?
The swinging vine, with no one on it. It was very scary.
Max wasn't entirely convinced, but he nonetheless decided to stay awake and guard over his bananas. He waited and waited. And then, when night was at its darkest, the bananas started to move by themselves. They moved into 3 rows of 4 bananas each, and then they moved again into 2 rows of 6 bananas each. Max stood aghast as 1 row of 6 bananas rose up into the air and floated away.
Stop! Come back with my bananas!
The next morning, a humbled Max told his friends what had happened.
Whatever it is, it's invisible. But it must be stopped, nonetheless.
I'll stand guard with you tonight, Max. We'll try to catch the thief.
That afternoon, they picked 9 delicious bananas. That night, after having placed the bananas on the ground near his tree, Max pretended to sleep. And the giraffe did her best to hide in some bushes nearby. Shortly after midnight, the bananas began to move. They moved into 3 rows of 3 bananas each. Then 1 whole row rose up and floated away.
Grab it! This time, let's use a trap.
So Max and his friends spent the day digging a deep hole and covering it with large leaves. Then Max carefully placed 9 bananas on the leaves, for by this time his passion for bananas had turned into grim determination to catch the banana thief. That night, Max and the giraffe waited once more, but they were so tired from building the trap that they soon dozed off. Whatever it was, the invisible thief was trapped. So Max told the giraffe to stick his head into the hole and feel around.
Help! It's got me!
Hey! It's crawling up my neck!
The invisible thief had gotten away with 3 of Max's 9 bananas again. The following day, the alligator called them all together.
I have a feeling that we're not going to capture this invisible thief, but we can prevent him from stealing as many bananas as he has been.
But how?
Most thieves do things in a certain way. Let's review the thefts and see if there's a pattern to them.
Let's see. The night I brought home 15 bananas, he took 5 of them. And then the next time I brought home 12 bananas, he took 6 of them. And both times that I had 9 bananas, he took 3 of them. What?
Well, 5 divides 15 evenly, 6 divides 12 evenly, and 3 divides 9 evenly.
What do you mean, divides evenly?
The alligator explained that if you have 15 bananas, you can split them into groups of 5, and you'll have none left over. And if you have 12 bananas, you can split them into groups of 6 and have none left over. And, continued the alligator, if you have 9 bananas, you can split them into groups of 3 and have none left over.
I think I figured out his pattern. When I had 12 bananas, he first put them into groups of 4, but then changed them into groups of 6. 4 divides 12 evenly, and 6 also divides 12 evenly. So he took 6, which is the larger divisor. That's his pattern. He always takes the larger divisor.
Well, how come he didn't take all 12 bananas? 12 is the largest divisor of 12.
Because he never takes all the bananas. That's part of his pattern.
Isn't there a number of bananas I could gather where he'd take nothing?
I'm not sure.
Well, if he takes only 3 bananas when I have 9, what about 10?
But they found that 5 divides 10 evenly. So 10 wasn't a good number, since the thief would take 5. Then they tried 11 bananas. 11 could not be divided into groups of 2 evenly, and it can't be divided into groups of 3 evenly, nor groups of 4, nor 5, nor 6, nor 7, nor 8, nor 9, nor 10. Only 11 worked. So Max went out and collected 11 bananas. And that night he waited and watched, and sure enough, the bananas began to move. First they moved into a shape like this, and then a shape like this, and finally they moved into a shape like this. Max held his breath. He was sure the thief was going to take them all. But just as the alligator had predicted, the thief didn't take all the bananas, and 1 is the only other divisor that can be divided into 11 with no remainder. He had stuck to his pattern.
Oh, well, I guess I can afford to lose 1 banana from the bunch.
Several weeks later, Max's cousin Alvin came to visit. After a delicious dinner, Alvin laid back and groaned with satisfaction.
That's the first full meal I've had in weeks.
And why is that?
Because someone has been taking most of my coconuts.
I guess 1 banana wasn't enough for him.
For who?
Have another banana, and I'll tell you all about it.